You can't talk about email without thinking about anti-malware and anti-spam. And the Microsoft Exchange Online Protection Center, or EOP, provides built-in malware and spam filtering capabilities. This is going to look at both inbound as well as outbound messages and try to avoid any malicious software and protect your network. Now, for the most part, we don't need to do anything, but there may be organization-specific configurations that we want to make to help further protect our organization. So in this module, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about anti-malware, we're going to talk about anti-spam, and we're going to talk about the quarantining process. Let's begin with malware. Malware, like other items that we've discussed throughout the entire course, is configured using policies. The beauty of policies is reuse. If you've ever developed any code or written any code, the more modular, the better, because we're able to reuse that code. So what we want to look at here is creating policies so we can customize those policies and reuse those policies if we should choose to do so, and we can apply those policies to multiple users. This will help us block incoming malware, which are viruses or any spyware, as well as preventing any outgoing malware. Someone internally accidentally sending something to someone else and it contains some malware. So there's a couple ways we can do this. Obviously, we talked about the Exchange Online Protection Center. That's one way. Or we can use Exchange Server for on-prem. But we can also use this in addition to client machine anti-malware. So we have a couple different tools we can use for protecting our users and our content and our network. The anti-malware settings, we have notifications. So we can define what happens if we detect malware. We can notify internal senders as well as external senders. We can notify administrators about undelivered messages from internal senders because it contained malware. We can notify administrators about undelivered messages from external senders. We can also decide what else we want to do. We can decide to delete the entire message. We can delete all attachments and just use the default alert text, or we can delete all the attachments and we'll customize the alert text so it's specific to our organization. In addition to that, we can create what are called connection filter policies. This is more or less like a whitelist or a blacklist of incoming emails. So we can identify specific IP address ranges where we're not going to be too concerned about whether or not it contains any malware. So let's step out to our interface and take a look at exploring anti-malware and some of the configuration settings that we have available to us to help protect our network and our users from malware. Here we are in the Exchange Admin Center, and on the left-hand side, we have an option called Protection. We're going to click that to go into the Exchange Online Protection Center. Notice we have the malware filter and the connection filter, which we've already discussed in this module. We'll see the spam options a little bit later on along with quarantine. But notice we have our default filter here. And the settings for this are no, we don't want to notify recipients. It has some common attachment type filters that are going to be blocked before they even attempt to come in. We have options down here for notifications. Now, this is the default setting. We may not be happy with this. This may take care of most of my concerns, but what if I'm more paranoid? I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus sign. We're going to create our own, and I'm going to say over protective. And I'm going to create an additional one. Provided description. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, if malware is detected in an email attachment, the message will be quarantined and can only be released by an admin. So the default is no. We could say yes and use the default notification text, or we could say yes and use custom notification text, and we'll just specify we saved you, something like that. Then we can scroll down and say, what types of files are we concerned with? Turn off this feature to block attachment types that may harm your computer. It's on with all of these by default. The ACE, the .app, .exes, jars, screensavers, VB scripts, these are all blocked by default. We can control this if we choose to do so. For instance, I can go in and click on screensaver and then click minus, and notice that goes away. I normally leave these alone. If anything, I add some additional ones here. Notifications. Sender first. Send a message to the sender of the undelivered message. Notify internal senders as well as external senders. Here's the administrator notifications. Notify administrators about undelivered messages from internal senders. And here's the email address that we would send this notification to. Same with external senders. Here's a custom notification. Let me scroll down a little bit more here. Using custom notification text, the from name and address and the subject along with a message for them. and this would be applicable to our senders as well as our administrator notifications. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, we have externals, and then we can apply these to groups. And this is the primary reason you might want to create a custom anti-malware policy. So I could say if it comes from the domain Microsoft, and then I can go in there with the exception of if it's from redmond.microsoft.com. So we can create our own policies, and generally this is the area that we're going to work with. In addition to specifying the messages, this is the area that's going to be used for this policy to be applied. So that's how we would manage our anti-malware policies. Connection filters. We may have certain organizations that we're not concerned with at all. We have our default one. Notice I can't add a new one here. I can only modify the default. Now, for the most part, my best practices are always leave the default options alone and create your own. Well, we don't have that option here, so we're going to have to modify this if we choose to do so. We'll double click on this and open this up. Here's our general, here's our connection filtering, and here's my IP allow list, and here's my IP block list. So if I am often getting malware from a specific IP address range, I add that and I block that. If I'm getting messages from a certain IP address range and I know they're all going to be good, and I'll add that IP address range to the allow list, and this will allow those messages to come through. We can also come down here and click the enable safe list, and over here Microsoft subscribes to various third-party sources of trusted senders. Selecting this says skip all the spam filtering on messages sent from these senders, which means they'll never be mistakenly quarantined or marked as spam. So this is how I would come in and manage my malware options, specifically my malware filters and my connection filters.